Unitarian Church in Statesboro, Georgia, and is a friend of Anna Dickson's. Registered through for lunch through Rel.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. And I can see Mrs. Taylor, who will be the guest minister. She's really so.
May I ask one question? Can you all hear at the back now?
I will project. I'll do my best to, so just do this.
Turn up the volume.
Well, we've got a lot of material to cover today. I'm going to do my very best to get through it. I will say just at the beginning, same questions last week, given the nature of the topic, that people with conscience and history as a kind of baseline discussion, let's have respect and understanding and charity towards others to the extent that people espouse views, voice views that are different from yours. I will also say, directed at me, as terms of kind of communicate or research some points of view that we'll consider today. There will be some parts, the structure is a little bit different this time. There will be parts for discussion where I'll invite your feedback and questions. We'll try to be that mindful time in order to cover everything. I'm happy at some point later down the road to talk with anybody who has questions, wants to discuss things further. We're going to be sharing the slides, and this will be available later. And I'm also putting together a recommended reading list that we share with you. So I'm thinking about who should be included and what we should be included. I have recordings to that around that we share with you.
Unmute.
I did. Yes. Yeah.
And is it any better towards the back?
Okay. So just a quick refresher on the last session, what we covered, the kind of key points. First, we know that within the Bible, we have ambiguous witnesses about the morality of war and about the use of force in certain circumstances. And I suggested that regardless of where you look in scripture, whether you're inclined to think that Christianity requires us to be committed to non-violence, or whether you think that it's possible in some circumstances that Christians can obediently and faithfully use violent force to protect life. Either way, there are parts of scripture, there are places within the scripture that you will have to respect. The two examples of these different positions were considered. First, John covered here, the Mennonite theologian, and we looked at his espousement of nonviolent resistance based on his reading of the Gospels in particular. And then we considered as well the fourth theologian called Art, who endorses the possibility from a Christian standpoint of just removal. The final thing I would say, and this can cover pretty quickly, is that our theological convictions matter on this point. So we don't read scripture, I think, without already having some views, some ideas about who God is, about the significance of Jesus Christ's life, about the significance of creation, about what sin means, and we bring all of those convictions and these ideas to scripture. And it's a nuanced process of reading scripture, rethinking what we believe about Christ and God. And sort of like a usual sort of refinement that takes place in reading scripture and thinking about theology. And we noted that as one example of this, John Howard Yoder's understanding of creation and what it means for human beings to be living in a world that is fallen, that is sinful, and what it means for creation to be caught up in this allness informs his understanding of what governments do and what states do, and the possibility of justice, and sort of the necessity of violence in that environment. And similarly to Karl Marx, coming to creation from a different perspective, thinking about God's embrace of creation and endorsement of the goodness of creation and the person of Jesus Christ in the incarnation, Marx offers a different picture of what the goodness of creation might mean and its implications for what we're thinking about just war. And today, we are going to assume Marx's position or the possibility of just war from a Christian perspective and think about a moral framework for wrestling questions about what it means to participate in just war. And this is just an outline of what we'll cover today. First, we're going to talk about the particular considerations and questions related to going to war in the first place, and engaging. Under what conditions could a state, could people who are part of the armed forces, could Christians even taking up arms, do this in a way that is just? Second, we'll think about morality during the war. So after you have gone to war, how should war be conducted? Is there a just way to wage war? And what moral considerations there for us as Christians? We'll spend a little bit of time too on the particular case of terrorism. I'm mainly going to pose questions to you and encourage you to think about it. And I think it's just relevant in our own world today, particularly post 9/11, right? Even today, it continues to be relevant. And I encourage you to get further thought to it. I'll have some questions for you. Just food for further thought, basically. A couple qualifications for this session. So this is not going to be a comprehensive survey just for degree. That would be an entire sort of semester's long session, or series of sessions. I'm just going to highlight a few key concepts that Christian centuries identify with thinking about just war. And hopefully that's helpful for you. And again, like I mentioned last week, or 2 weeks ago, hopefully it's sort of like a toolbox, right? And giving you a couple of tools to think and reflect on your own as Christians, and as American citizens about the moral questions related to war. The other thing that in this qualification, this may be a little bit petty, but I think it's important. We will keep our discussion for the most part on general moral principles, theological insights and concepts, and not get into the nitty-gritty, particular judgments based on those principles. And what I mean by distinction, the actual exercise of making moral judgments, of trying to determine what the right thing to do, is always going to be informed by particular circumstances and particular cases. It's always incredibly unique, right, when we have to make a moral decision. And we can use general concepts and principles, and we can even agree on those general concepts and principles. But when it comes to particular circumstances and an individual's choice within that sort of arena, people can disagree about the correct application of those rules with judgment, right? I'll use a simple example here. I think everyone here can agree lying is not something that we want to do, right? But there are circumstances in which we might give pause to not tell someone the truth, right? So if somebody's incredibly discouraged, I'll use an example. So my daughter's soccer team just finished their season. We were super supportive. They were awful. did not win a single game all season. They scored 2 goals the entire season. But in that situation, right, does my commitment to not lying and to telling the truth require me to tell my daughter that her team wasn't good enough compared to the other team, and that they need to improve? Or my daughter asks, "Are we any good? Do we play well?" Is it okay for me to say, "You did a great job. You tried really hard and you did a good job," right? We have the concept of the white lie, which is to say, right, that we can generally agree that lying is not something that we should do to each other. But there are circumstances in which it seems like we can disagree about whether this is lie or not, right? Whether this is deceiver. So that's just an example. So we'll stick with general concepts and principles. Particular judgments are always difficult, and I think it's easy for us to get kind of lost in particularities. So just as a refresher again, the point of view that we start with today, the possibility of just war, which has been endorsed by Christian theologians at least in the 14th century, up to the 20th century. And Mark is our representative of this, the Reformed theologian of the 20th century. And so just as a starting point, again, no pressure. Here's what Mark says in his book, The Church Dogmatics, about the possibility of just war. Mark says, human life, one's own and that of others, belongs to God. Therefore, respect is due to it, and with respect, protection against each and every callous negation and destruction. So as a baseline point of view, the Christian doctrine that all of life and all human beings are created by God, as a starting point, demands absolute respect and protection of that life as a creation of God. However, it may be possible that in certain circumstances, our respect for life, our commitment to other things as Christians, require us to take actions. So for people to go to war, knowing that the activity of going to war will inevitably lead to death, lots of suffering and destruction. And what Mark says, all affirmative answers to this question of a just war are wrong from the very outset and constitute a flat betrayal of the gospel. And they ignore the whole risk and venture of this nevertheless, and do not rest on an exact calculation of what is here at stake and whether we can and must nevertheless reply in front of it. So I think this is a good point for us to start a discussion. That is, even if we endorse the possibility of just war Christians, we need to recognize the incredible theological and moral hazard of that endorsement. And this is what Mark calls this a nevertheless with a capital N. There's certain circumstances that Christians can, in good faith and integrity, do things, even though we recognize almost everything else that we say as vows, everything that we do, and all the ways we behave seem to light in the face of this particular action we're taking in this particular instance. So if it's possible for Christians to endorse a just war, or at least the possibility of it, how do we think about the morality of the just war? So there's a classic distinction you may see that actually recently op-eds or articles in the news recently about Israel and Ukraine. There's a distinction that's been there for a very long time, in part originating from the reflections of theologians over the centuries in the medieval period. The distinction is use Adam or the justice of going to war, beginning a war, or engaging in war. and use in bello, which is the morality of conducting war. And once you're in war, what's the moral and just way to behave as soldiers, for example? Now, these two frameworks are our two concepts are related, but they're independent. This is really an important point. So it's important for us to decide as Christians whether going to war is just or not, whether it can be endorsed. And assuming that war is just and it's possible for people to just to go to war, then there's additional questions about how to actually engage in war. And it's possible for a war to be just, for the decision of the war to be just, but for the soldiers who are fighting it to conduct themselves in an unjust way. Right? The simple endorsement of war as a just cause does not allow soldiers, and let's say the side who's on the right side of the debate, who has virtue on them, it doesn't permit that side to do anything and everything that they want to do. And I think that's really important. This use in bello is just to say that even in war, even in the hell that is war, the horrendous things that happen in war, the ways in which all of our unusual ways of operating a society are thrown up in the air, we still conduct ourselves as moral beings. And I think this is really important. We'll talk a little bit about one of the authors that we're looking at, Michael Walzer. But Michael Walzer makes this point, I think, very well in his book, Just Unjust Wars. He looks explicitly at the history of warfare, historical documents about warfare back to ancient Greece, and he says that often people say all this fair, love, and war, that you can do whatever you need to in war to achieve the objective. Walter says we don't actually behave that way as human beings. There are a couple of like exceptional cases, right? We can think about horrendous evil. It's perpetrated by people. But for the most part, overwhelmingly throughout history, even the people engaged in war see themselves as morally accountable creatures who have some moral obligation, even in the circumstances. So that's the important distinction. You can go to war on a just basis, but you can conduct war in unjust ways. So first, this concept of use as element, when is war just? So here, we'll go for one articulation of this against Karl Barth. And here's what Barth says. The conduct of one state or nation can throw another into the wholly abnormal situation of emergency, in which not merely its greater or lesser prosperity, but its very existence and autonomy are missed and intact. In consequence of the attitude of this other state, a nation can find itself faced by the question whether it must surrender or assert itself as such. Nothing less than this final question must be an issue if the war is to be just and necessary. So here we have Barth articulating the idea that the only circumstances under which war is just is when the very existence, the integrity of a country, a political community, a state, is thrown into question by the deliberate actions of another state or nation. And only in these circumstances can war possibly be just and necessary. Now, this is Michael Walzer, who I mentioned a little bit ago, with another articulation of this idea that Barth mentions. Walzer was a professor, or is a professor at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton. He's a political philosopher, moral philosopher, and we're gonna do excerpts from this book, so this will be on the reading list. If there were one book I would say you need to read, or that I would recommend reading, and thinking about just for would be this book. It's hard to overstate how exceptional this piece of writing is in thinking about the justice of the war. And it's really rich and nuanced. He puts in lots of historical examples. He pays attention to the writings of soldiers and their descriptions of what happened in those events. It is incredibly nuanced. He's not a theologian. He's a Jewish philosopher. But I think he articulates and draws from a lot of ideas within the Christian tradition. So it's excellent. And here's what Walter says about the conditions under which the word is justified. Going to aggression is the name we give to the crime of war. So this concept of aggression in international law. We know crime because of our knowledge of the peace it interrupts. Not the mere absence of fighting, but peace with rights. A condition of liberty and security that exists only in the absence of aggression itself. The wrong the aggressor commits is to force men and women to risk their lives for the sake of their rights. Groups of citizens respond in different ways to that choice, but they are always justified in fighting. And in most cases, given that choice, fighting is the morally preferred response. And so when one state admits to aggression against another, and the state is attacked, decides to defend itself through military force, what is it that they are interested in protecting and preserving? And Walter says this, that the rights in question, when the state decides to defend itself and soldiers take up arms to defend their country, these rights are something as territorial integrity and political sovereignty. When states are attacked, it is their members who are challenged, not only in their lives, but also in the sum of things they value most, including the political association they have made. If they were not morally entitled to choose their form of government and shape the policies that shape their lives, external coercion would not be a crime. Nor could it be so easily said that they had enforced the resistance on the defense. So the idea here is we as human beings have the right to political association, to form states, communities, and decide how we will live our lives together. And that is a freedom that is respected and honored. And then when the integrity, the political integrity, the territorial integrity, political sovereignty of the state is threatened with annihilation, that political community is what that's tries to defend itself in the interest of preserving what it is most so to achieve. Going back to the part, this is a theological articulation of the same thing, getting a little deeper from a theological perspective. And we saw this 2 weeks ago. We'll revisit this because I think it's very important. Or ask, why do we have to allow the possibility that a war waged for this reason must be described as a just war in spite of all the horrors it will certainly entail? The obvious answer is that there may well be bound up with the independent life of a nation, responsibility for the whole physical, intellectual, and spiritual life of people comprising it, and therefore their relationship with God. It may well be that the independent state, they would also have to yield something which must not be betrayed, which is necessarily more important than the preservation of life itself, and more important than the preservation of the lives of those who unfortunately are trying to take it from them. So the idea here is, from a theological perspective, thinking about the doctrine of creation. What it means for God to have created human beings, given them freedom. That God has entrusted human beings with the responsibilities and privileges of political community, of living life together. And what uses the language of entrusting? God entrusted nations and countries with this special gift. And this gift is of such importance, it's of such value for human beings, that it is worth risking your life and potentially taking the lives of others to defend it. And this is just an invitation to think about that, right? When we say that people are created in the image of God, that God created human beings, what does that mean, right? What does it mean to live human life as part of creation and the significance of that life? What does it mean that we as human beings form political communities, form states, decide together how we live across the centuries and across geographical area? And Marx says that once we understand the importance of this gift of life from God and the significance of it for each individual community, we can understand why, in certain circumstances, it would be necessary, and the people within a state would feel it was necessary to use violent force to defend their right of life. But with that said, and here's the distinction between Marx and someone like Walter. There are limits or things that we as Christians have to recognize when it comes to protecting a political community or a state. Marx says, even the existence or non-existence of the state does not always constitute a valid reason for war. It can sometimes happen that the life of the state and the expressive form of existence has expired. That its independent life has no more meaning or basis. And that it is thus better advised to build and surrender, continuing its life in a greater crisis of states. There are times when this question has to be raised and answered. The example, interestingly, that Mark gives here is the example of Jeremiah in the Old Testament. Just as a quick refresher, so Jeremiah, prophet of Israel, during the period in which the Babylonian Empire invades Israel, destroys the land, takes captive lots of Israelites, forcibly moves them to Babylon, as was the practice before them. And what Jeremiah says, in contrast to other prophets in the Old Testament, is that Israel should seek to be faithful even in this circumstance. That it is not the use of violent force against the Babylonians that is called for here, but that they are to, in Jeremiah's words, plant fingers, right? Find a way to live as Israelites with integrity, even in Babylon. And if that's the case for Israel, right? God's chosen nation in the Old Testament, then we have to leave open the possibility that there are circumstances in which, even depending on the local community and a state, is not going to be justified. So I think it's difficult for us to kind of imagine this, right? It's difficult for me as an American to imagine a situation in which I might come to a position that made the time in the United States as a straight political project experiment and everything that's political about the US, right? Is we're giving up. But it's possible, right? In certain circumstances, the Christians have said, you know what? The destruction of life, the evils that will result in no war cannot be justified in this case. And why would this be the case? Barber doesn't say this, right? But I think for us as Christians, the political and historical story of humankind is not the whole story, right? It's also the story that we tell about God and about, to use a big theological term, eschatology, right? That God is directing history and all of creation to an end, ultimately reconciliation with God, fellowship with God and one another. We can imagine that lots of different ways that theologians have. But the point is, there's a bigger story, and there's a providential God directing history towards something. And so the ultimate end of history is not the preservation of the United States. As much as we love the United States and think it's valuable and valuable, the ultimate end of history is the redemption and reconciliation of humankind in the person of Jesus Christ, right? And the fellowship that that brings. Second surprise. Use that Augustus spoken to the word. One common answer here that we see in Walter's remark is war is justified only in cases where we have an act of aggression committed by one state against another, which threatens the existence of that other state. That when members of the state attack to defend themselves, the basis for doing that is to preserve territorial integrity, their political sovereignty. We've seen parts of articulation of creation, God entrusting nations with the gifts, which is a common way of life. There's a theological basis for understanding that, and that there are limits to that. So I think we'll take a few minutes here to get responses and any questions before we move on. Any reactions or thoughts? Yes.
So, which doesn't find is emphasis on the state as opposed to the people in the state. So I guess the more defense is justified if they don't have a draft. Like if the children can sue them and the grandparent and the women and the children and the story might be in.
Okay, yeah, this is good. This is a good point. I think that what Walter Mark would say is that ultimately the state has its value and significance because of the individual's borders. So it's not just like there's the state, right? Mark says there's not this kind of strange, mysterious thing that exists that's called the state that needs to be protected. Or I think the reason the state has such moral significance is because of the individuals who have decided to live together.
The state can make a decision about it.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
So it's sort of fake.
Well, I think that's the way to think about it. I think like, yeah. Well, I think so. There's a distinction I think we can draw between, let's say, like, in a sort of domestic context with individual self-defense and the concept of war. And individuals can't really do. But we, over the course of history, have talked about war in the context of political communities or states making that decision. And it's only really political communities or states that are able to make a decision to go with it.
And that underlying value is moral superiority. The one who is self-defense, the one who's taking over, they don't want to be that. They don't want to be the aggressor. They're not trying to be eaten by the aggressor, right?
That's right. But you can say, I think, simply that our way of life is worth preserving, right?
You are just five nations, and we want to live under the king.
Yeah, we don't, right? So like, I think you could say, we want to defend our way of life in our country against an outside aggressor. But you could say at the same time, that like, we think there's something we're preserving here. But that doesn't necessarily mean we think ourselves as something superior to that aggressor, right? It's just that we have something to protect, I think.
I have a question, and this might be a whole, going into a whole other topic, but you mentioned draft, you know, how some countries have draft really done. How does that play in with, as far as Christians, if you're more of a pacifist and the country has said, okay, maybe we have to, you know.
No, again, another really good question, and I think it was mentioned in the first question, right? So I'm not going to get credit for mentioning that. But, so let's talk a little bit about this. And he does think it's possible for Christians to be conscientious objectors. But he also thinks the burden of in this case of was just it's for Christians to, you know, for those who are drafted by freedom men to answer the call of duty in this particular case. It leaves open the possibility that Christians could live in integrity, say, I refuse to fight, I refuse to take arms, I don't want to be part of this. But he also thinks if we as Christians want to endorse the possibility of just war, then as part of that, we also have to say that it may be necessary for young men and women to be drafted and effectively force them to, you know, military action. But it's a difficult question, and part acknowledges that. And it's not going to be a one size fits all kind of thing in that case. Yeah.
From the description of your daughter's operating all the way to war. Yeah. It seems like it seems like it boils down to situational ethics. And how much easier it is for a legalist, you can do that. But what I mean, just trying to here in church in our home, you overcome the situation ethics is possible. And it's hard.
Yes.
So one calls it unethical. Yeah.
Well, I think that's well, I think that's just sort of the nature of moral disagreement, right? That makes sense. And the nature of like being in a political community where people can disagree. There are circumstances in which we might, most of us agree that it was just. So the example that they put to Walter, for example, points to it, I think mind is there's not going to be disagreement among a lot of people right now once the Germany needing to be stopped. Knowing everything they're doing beyond the fact that they're just like taking more territory, more territory. There's other cases, like the vast majority of cases, where people disagree about whether or not material was just. And I'm really sorry, I just wish we could cover this other stuff too. We have time for mindful we've got other people in there. So we're going to talk a little bit about use of this maybe even more structured than what we talked about before. But there's two key concepts in just war theory and thinking about justice more. So the first is the moral equality of soldiers. And we see this articulated in Walter. So, what are the moral constraints and moral obligations that I have as a soldier, let's say, fighting the war? Let's say that I believe the war is just. I'm confident in my own moral judgment, right? It's just as a Christian, I think it's just cause. But then within war, if I'm a soldier fighting, what are my moral constraints obligations? Part of those constraints obligations will be informed by this concept of the moral equality of soldiers. And here's how Walter describes it. We still hold soldiers to certain standards, even though they fight unwillingly. That's in fact, precisely because we assume they all fight unwillingly. The enemy soldier that we sworn may well be criminal is nevertheless as blameless as himself. Ours he is an enemy, but he is my enemy in any specific sense. Enemy soldiers or persons just like me, trapped in a technique. And I find in them unable equals. That is not something to say that I acknowledge their humanity, it is precisely the recognition that they were not brothers. This might be a head scratch, but I think this is important. The culture is talking about soldiers. He's not talking about the kings, the presidents, the dictators who make a decision to go, right? I think the idea here is that wars for most human beings would rather be doing something else. And even soldiers on an enemy side of an aggressive state committing terrible crimes, those soldiers, most of them, are human beings like us, and they would not voluntarily participate in a war like this. But there's some political wars requirement of law, restriction, whatever it is. And it's a recognition within that context that this soldier on the other side deserves my full respect. And that I am restrained in certain ways and how I can enact. Now, with that said, Walter says soldiers as a class are apart from the world of peaceful activity. They are trained to fight, provide the weapons required of command. No doubt they do not always fight, nor is their first enterprise. But it is the enterprise of the class and this fact that radically distinguishes the individual soldier from the slave and cities behind. They can try to kill me, and I can try to kill them, but it is wrong. To cut the throats of their wounded or to shoot them down when they're trying to speak. So soldiers lose certain rights by being soldiers taking arms, but they don't lose all rights. And it's a recognition that they still have rights even in those circumstances. But it's what Walter's saying here for all these years. Yeah, I can come back to that. Just a really quick example that I think illustrates the moral insight here. There's a story that Walter tells about Emilio Luzu. He was an Italian political writer, soldier in World War I. Later became an activist against fascism and against exile. When he writes about his experiences in World War I, he tells this really interesting story of one night fighting Austrian troops. And he and another soldier, he take up a position during the night overlooking the trenches of the Austrian forces. And in the morning, they're scouting and they see a group of Austrian soldiers. And what Luzu realizes is that this sort of faceless enemy, this menace that he had been fighting for months, is suddenly, to his astonishment, actual human beings just like him. Young men just like him, who are sitting together talking and having coffee. And the entire time of the fight in this battle, he had not seen the other side. He was just shooting at the other side and was shooting down, but suddenly he sees that on the other side are actually human beings. And he knows that it's his responsibility as an Italian soldier, that he's right to attack these soldiers. And so he pulls up his gun and he gets within a sight of one of the soldiers. And then the soldier strikes to say that they're going to start smoking. And this says that it's something I realized. This man's having a cigarette, and I have a cigarette. And I don't know how much I wanted a cigarette. And he's like, we sort of right now a cigarette. And he's watching this, you know, like totally unaware of this soldier smoking cigarettes. And he's like, you know what? I think I'm justified in shooting a soldier, but I can't do it. And he says it's one thing to put thousands of men against thousands of men. It's another thing to put hundreds of men against military conflict. But it's another thing to says to say one of the lines we stand in our state of relationship. And he convinced. And why would that be? Walter puts it this way, and I think this is better than the theological language of persecution. What does it mean to say that someone has the right to life? In this case, who decides not to shoot, right? It's individual soldiers smoking a cigarette and doing experiments. To say that someone has the right to life is to recognize a fellow creature who is not friendly, whose activities are the savor of peace and camaraderie, whose person is as valuable as man. So the idea here, right? Even within the Renaissance civil war, soldiers have some kind of moral quality, have certain rights. And underneath that is a recognition that the soldiers are also fellow creatures, human beings who deserve respect, person and integrity. Now, I think this one is interesting, right? Because you think, what happens if the soldier suddenly becomes aware of Lucido, turns around and presses his gun? I think with two sheets, right? What happens if instead of a lowly soldier having breakfast in the cigarette, this is a commanding general who was done horrendous things to prisoners of war in his camp? Right, so we can see there's sort of like a spectrum here, right? A sliding scale. Difficult to know sometimes, but at times, the courts have to recognize the fellow humanity, the sets of creatures of others. The second key concept I want to cover a little bit is combatants versus non-combatants. So the moral qualities of soldiers, and also the distinction between combatants and non-combatants. So combatants are those engaged in war, the soldiers themselves, right? And then non-combatants, the civilians. And I'm providing a quote from Ford because I think it's and there are serious questions asked about it. The Ford says this about war in the 20th century. The force of action of which a nation and all its members are actually engaged in killing, or in the direct or indirect revolution and promotion of killing. All are involved in this action, either as those who desire or as those who commit it. And in any case, as those who contribute to this subsector. All are directly responsible with respect to the question of whether it's man killing or man murder. So I think here, if we're reading our charity, what he means here is that within the 20th century and modern warfare, all citizens have to wrestle with the moral status of the war, right? And they're all within a political community. Uncharitably, I think he's dramatically overstating, right, the extent to which we hold civilians are accountable for what happens in the war. But we have this distinction between combatants and non-combatants that's crucial. And another key principle of the war, right, is that soldiers can be shot, but people who are not soldiers cannot be shot. And that we shouldn't force someone who is not taken up arms to fight themselves for their own protection, right? The civilians deserve respect, and their lives are worth protecting, even on the opposite side, the aggressor states. But underneath that, just to kind of step over here, right, is theological respect for human life. Human life, once that of others, belongs to God. For God has unequivocally and fully accepted the name of Jesus Christ. Their respect is due to it, and with respect and protection against each and every obligation and destruction. So the idea here is that when we have an aggressive state, and we're conducting war, the lives of the people who are not engaged in the war themselves, who are not combatants, demand and deserve respect and protection. And that people engaged in war should do whatever they can to minimize the risk to civilians. Right? And I think part of our culture are sophisticated and realistic enough to realize that not in every circumstance will you be able to guarantee the protection and safety of civilians. Right? There's still this full obligation grounded in respect for life to do what you can within limits to preserve and protect that civilian. So just a quick summary, and I'll just raise a few questions about there. Use of alcohol, like I said, it's sort of independent of arena. You can do it more justly, but there's also a separate question about whether waiting for the actual activation form of the board of God are best. Two key concepts or ideas that inform understanding of justice and war are the moral quality of soldiers and the distinction between combatants and non-combatants. And again, we have the logical basis for combatants, the recognition of soldiers as fellow creatures, human beings, caught up in the world in the web of sin. They would probably rather be doing something else. They don't want to be right. And on the other side, for non-combatants and civilians, they have not, in a sense, given up their rights. They haven't taken up arms. So, respect for life and protection of life demands doing what you can to preserve it and protect it. Now, just on terrorism, I encourage you to think within this framework and context about what makes terrorism a particular challenge and different. Terrorism is not, to the question earlier, the act of aggression by one state against the other, typically. There are typical cases where because a state is like housing terrorists, it's a terrorist state, but for the most part, historically, terrorist groups are not agents of the state, they're their own thing. So it's not a crime of aggression, what is this? In that context, too, is it threatened by terrorists? Is it the existence of state that is fairly wide? Is it the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the country? I would say no. In most cases, that's not the case. So then, what is the basis for, to the extent it's acceptable to be enforced by Christians? What is the basis for bottom force against terrorism, right? What are we seeking to preserve and protect? Moral equality, again, we don't think of terrorists running typically conscripted or dramatic soldiers. And then combatants versus non-combatants. One of the particular problems with terrorism, I think, or the challenge that it poses is that terrorists make no distinction whatsoever between combatants and non-combatants, right? They're not combatants or soldiers who want their right to life. It's civilians, by virtue of being part of the political community, have a right to not fulfill their rights. I just want to make one interesting point that Walter makes. Walter walks through examples of terrorism prior to World War II, and which terrorists were the opportunity to assassinate a political leader. Don't do it precisely because they're leaders. And Walter points out that the strategies of terrorists that don't distinguish between civilians and combatants were in part informed and learned from the strategies of World War II, in which military forces decided that the mass killing of civilians was necessary to achieve certain goals. So it's a development, absolutely, but it's not as if terrorists historically have always sort of made no distinction. They in part learned that there's no distinction from soldiers and people who participated in a military conflict. So just one part of our technology, which will just take a few minutes. So we've been talking about war, possibly a just war, but I think part here has to be word. It's really important. Mark says in his automatics, a beautiful passage, that it doesn't really require courage or serious Christian faith to talk about people's war, to protest wars against evil. What really requires faith, what I think we should think more about and courage, is working for peace and the preservation of peace. So the wars that are necessary. To be one step ahead of the real hard work of Christians is the place to foster peace and community, such that we never have possibly. And Mark says, what does require Christian faith and insight and courage is to tell nations and governments that peace is the real emergency to which all our time, powers, and abilities be devoted from the very outset, in order that men may live and live properly, so that no refuge need be sought, nor need be extracted from it, but peace is done. I think it's a wise word. It's something these Christians need to think about, right? We should be thinking about war, even in terms of peace, and what we as Christians can do to promote peace for sure. So we don't have to think about the questions now. Justice and war. Thanks for your time. Sorry, I know it's a lot. Sorry I didn't get better questions that I had.